This is She Said, podcast. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan. I've spent my entire career as an advocate, connector, problem solver, and master communicator at the highest levels of government and corporate America. I'm also a mom in a dual career household. With She Said, podcast, I'm sharing what I've learned that's helped me, and I'm also drawing additional perspective from a broad range of women who are creating amazing opportunities for themselves and for others. Their stories hold great advice and perspective about common challenges and the best ways to tackle them. Listen, I know your time is precious, but stick around. I think you'll find this investment in you well worth it. Hi, friends. Welcome. If you are anything like me, you are in search of positive content, especially right now, that's uplifting, but that still makes you think. My guest today truly fits that bill. She's Adriana Carrig, the founder of the Little Words Project, and she's working to make the world a better place, one kind, inspiring word at a time. Adriana, welcome to She Said,
Thank you so much for having me.
I am delighted to have you. So tell us about Little Words Project. What is it? How did this get started?
I started Little Words Project actually 7 years ago now. 7 years ago on November 11th is our 7-year anniversary.
Wow.
Out of my parents' basement, like all good startups begin. And it's a company that's really all about inspiring self-love and kindness, pretty much amongst everyone. There has been, for the past few years, it's really been mostly about spreading that love amongst women, but we are, towards the end of this year, going to be launching our first ever unisex line. So we're really trying to broaden that reach and touch as many hearts of as many different people as possible, because we believe that kindness really doesn't, knows all shapes and sizes. So there should be no reason that men can't wear bracelets too.
Right.
Yeah, so essentially what we are is as I mentioned, it's a pay it forward jewelry company. So the idea is you pick a word that means something to you, you wear that word for as long as you need it, and then you pass it on one day to someone who needs it more. So really sweet, like I said, pay it forward concept that just is meant to brighten your day when you look down at your wrist and see your words there, and then also that of someone else's when you do eventually pass it on.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't come at a better time. And I'm so interested to hear that you're branching out into items for men as well. We're just coming off of what has been a very divisive election. And while we don't need to talk about politics here because people have other places they can go for that, I would love for you to maybe talk a little bit about the impact that you hope to have. I also want you to get into, too, really where the original idea for Little Words Project actually came from. But maybe talk about the impact that you hope to have now that you're expanding this to include men as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually does help to start with where the idea came from, because I had grown up my entire life essentially dealing with negativity from other girls and kids of all ages. When I was a very young age, probably started when I was like in the third grade, and it continued for me well through college. I was essentially bullied that entire portion of my life, which when I tell that to people, they're like shocked, because I guess, whatever molds they have in their head of the type of person that might get bullied, I don't fit it. However, it just goes to show that, you can be targeted, you can be attacked for whatever. There might not be a specific reason. It's just because you're the flavor of the week.
Right.
So for me, it felt like it was like my entire life. And it was pretty much, I can remember like some incident from like each year of my growing up. And when I say it continued through college, that's kind of when it started to dawn on me that this was like a problem. It happened a lot with me, with other girls. So that's kind of where the initial desire to start a brand that was all about kindness amongst women came from. But that's not to say that there aren't plenty of young men and men, just people from all walks of life, all ages, deal with negativity and cruelty in one way or another.
Right.
And you said we've seen that a ton this year, and hopefully that's not going to happen going forward. So essentially the impact that we're hoping to make is the same that it was since the very beginning of launching this. And that's just kind of bringing a little bit more kindness into the world, right? Mm-hmm. Just like infringing on the territory of cruelty, having something that lives on your wrist that is meant to be a vehicle of that very kindness. I think it just helps people take a second look and think twice before they say something negative. They just, they look down and they know that they are a representation, a part of our community. And they know that, they kind of have to live up to what they say they're going to live up to when they put on this bracelet. It's almost like a bond with themselves to be kinder. So yeah, we're hoping to do that on a very large scale as we continue to grow. And it's already been, like I said, 7 years, and it's crazy to me how far we've come as far as how many people we've reached.
Yeah. So where did the original idea for the bracelet itself come from? This was an idea that you had in college or right after college, but why a bracelet? Why not a necklace, or why not some other tool? What was it about the bracelet that really resonated with you? And I have them on. I should tell you here, our viewers, our listeners rather, can't see them, but I'm wearing I have two custom ones. One is She Said, and one is Believe, because those were sort of two things that resonated with me. But I love them. They're great.
I love that.
Yeah.
Believe is actually my favorite word, because I believe that you can't achieve anything unless you believe in yourself first. Right. So that's been like my number one go-to answer whenever anyone asks what my favorite is. It's usually that one. So to answer your question, why a bracelet? It's really not as involved of an answer as you might think. The answer is I was 21 years old and I was making, obviously as women, we've grown up making jewelry, and I shouldn't say just women, I'm sure everyone has grown up making friendship bracelets, whether it's in camp or with your friends. And I really wanted to, I guess I intentionally took a new take on an old favorite, right? Just a simple beaded word bracelet, but it also comes down to the simple fact that like, it's what I was able to manufacture on my own in my parents' basement. Like I didn't have to jump through hoops. I didn't have to figure out, I didn't have to find a factory. I was just like, okay, I can get these materials. I can, sit down, I can make these myself, as I have been since I was a kid, and just kind of go from there. And so the original iteration of it, I had done in high school. I was making them for myself to kind of get through difficult times, always having positive words that I can look down at. And then when I got into college and I joined a sorority, I wanted to come up with a way to kind of like keep the love circulating. So I was like, oh, I'll use these bracelets that I'm making myself. And then this concept of passing it on and sharing it amongst ourselves, and it can be kind of like the sisterhood of the traveling bracelet. So fast forward, once I graduated, I had seen that the girls were still loving their bracelets. I made my first batch my sophomore year, and it just continued to be something, this like symbol of sisterhood for us that was like more iconic than our letter shirts. You know what I mean? It was like, that is how you know that was one of those sorority girls, whatever. And we were, luckily we were, a really just a good group of women, a really kind group. They were the reason that I felt like there was hope for kindness in girls. But yeah, once I graduated, I saw they were still doing it. And I thought to myself, like, why not bring this sisterhood to the masses? So it really did. I mean, we started as a female empowerment brand, and we're going to always be that at our core. But we really just wanted to be as inclusive as possible with this new arm of the men's unisex bracelets that are coming out this year. So, but yeah, simple answer, because easy.
Oftentimes those are the best, right? Something that's easy and obvious that somebody else is not taking advantage of is sometimes the best answer. So you graduate from college, you were set to go to law school, and you said, I think I'm going to pursue this full time. At what point did you realize that this could be not just a hobby or something that you did as a gift for friends, but something that was actually a legitimate business idea?
I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the concept of believing in yourself. I really didn't have any concrete evidence that this was going to work outside of that sorority group. So that 60 women was kind of like my little like microcosm test group. And seeing how much they loved it, I was kind of convinced that, okay, the right marketing, the right efforts, the right energy, there's a chance that this could really take off for the masses. So when I decided I was going to full time, I guess it really wasn't until about a year into making them and selling them that I was able to really dedicate myself full time to the business. And with law school, I was studying for the LSAT right around when, or I took the LSAT rather, which is the test to get into law school, right around the time that I was launching it. I was kind of like, oh, this will just be like a side project. And it really took off in the very beginning. And my LSAT scores weren't like telling me I had to go to Harvard. So I was like, okay, well then I think I'm just gonna trust this, and I'm gonna kind of go feet first and or head first rather, and trust my instincts and believe in myself. And it really helps that I had parents that were so understanding and like totally cool about it. And they've been so, helpful and just supportive of me ever since. And if I didn't have that, I probably would have been a little more inclined to like take a safer route.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky in that regard.
Yeah. So I have so many questions about how you go about starting a business like this, how you scale it, how you go from being in your parents' garage, you making the bracelets, to something that obviously has to scale in order to meet customer demand. I know that you have taken a self-funding route, which means that, you're still in charge of you. You're not beholden to your shareholders, just your customers and yourself. But maybe talk a little bit about the scaling process, and then why you made the decision to self-fund, because that can be it can be tough for people to decide to do that. It can be hard for women entrepreneurs to get funding too, but that's a whole nother story. But I'd love to hear your perspective.
Of course. I mean, that's definitely a part of why I never went that route. But to kind of start from the very beginning, when it comes to the scalability or the scaling of the brand, I mean, when I tell you that I kind of just started, that's exactly what I mean. I really just was like, okay, I make these, I can make them cuter. I'm going to get
Was this just you, or did you have a team at this point?
No, just me in the very beginning. I was making them literally on my bed in my college dorm room with materials from Michael's. Like, it was that simple. And then once I graduated, I was like, all right, let me just let's see. I think I can put together a website. So I say I got the business on sale because I had friends from all different groups. One girl was starting a website development business. So I was like, great, you want to make my website? I'll be your first client, whatever. And then, I had another friend who was in video production. I had him create like a little video for me. I think I will give myself the credit that from the very beginning, I've always had a pretty decent knack at marketing and at the importance of the story and telling the story along with selling the product. And I think that's very important for young entrepreneurs today. Like, if you want to start something, it's just really good to know, that it's really good to have a story behind it, right? And sell something more than just the product, right? Sell the feeling, the emotion, the experience. And I think that from the very beginning, that's what we got right. But yeah, so, it was really not like a calculated, there was no business plan. There was no, okay, after year one, I'm going to be at this stage and da-da-da. I really just kind of started. I started selling. I reference this book a lot, and I don't know, I mean, you've definitely done your research, so you might have seen me talk about it before, but I read this book called The $100 Startup, and it's literally a tiny little book. And in that book, the author says, which his name's escaping me right now, but the author says, all you need to start a business is something to sell, a way to collect people's money, and people who want to buy it.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's simple. Like, I'm going to do that. So I put up a website, took pictures of the product, had a way to capture their credit card payments, and a way to ship them out the door. And it was really just a matter of like, let's just try. Right off the bat, I had the help of the sorority posting the link on social media. Social media has been a big help in the scaling of the business. So that really helped. And then, as time went on and I started getting bigger and bigger, I just kind of met the demand with, a change, right? So if it was, okay, you're getting a ton more online orders, I need to hire someone to come help me make, or I need to beg my mom to come help me make bracelets, which she did. And my dad helped me with the shipping in the very beginning. Again, supportive parents are key.
So great.
If friends or family, whatever you have, leverage them. And then, as time went on and we started going into retail stores because I had a rep contact me and say, hey, I think I could help you get into stores. I'm like, what does that mean? And I would learn, right? So it was really just a bootstrapped experience where I would every single day I'd learn something new, and I'm still learning to this day. It's exhausting, but it's cool to feel like you can do it on your own. And I like that you mentioned that we didn't go the traditional funding route because so many people feel as though, I don't know, I feel like it's a barrier to entry for so many young people, especially young women who are maybe a little kind of intimidated by that concept. I definitely was. I'm not as much anymore, but now we don't really need it. So if I had been a little more confident back then, I guess maybe I would have tried that route. But ultimately we ended up not needing it. And we've been self-funded since the very beginning, profitable in the first month, which is just exciting to think about. And we've remained that since that time. And we managed to double actually, or just shy of double year over year since starting. So it's just been a wild ride that we figured out on the way. And yeah. I say we now because after my first year, I ended up slowly building that team. It went from 1 person to 2 people to 3 to now about 25.
That's really, really incredible. Congratulations. That's awesome. So for a social impact business, which is what this is, right? It's a direct to consumer social impact business, but you're also looking at partnering and using influencers and things like that. Maybe talk a bit, because this whole notion of having quote unquote influencers is kind of a new concept. It's like raging and on fire. But how do you think about that as it relates to being really, your story is such an important component of your business, especially when it's a social impact business. And that's clearly something that's important to you. You've talked about that. Maybe talk about how you go about selecting other brands to work with, selecting influencers to work with. How do you think about that as it relates to the overall story of your business?
I think, like you said, it's a relatively new element of the business, right? When I first started, Instagram was like brand new, and I was really lucky and able to kind of ride that growth wave with it. But I remember, in the very beginning, I was posting to like nobody. There were like 3 major influencers that are now, the biggest ones out there, and they were small at the time. So the concept of like influencer gifting or working with influencers, it really didn't exist. So I really just catered at that time to my customer. So I would post pictures, I'd do behind the scenes. I've always been super transparent on social media. Like I'm put together right now for the first time in months because we had a video that we were filming. For the most part, it's like me with my hair up, in sweats, at the office, at home, whatever it might be, being like, this is business owning, And I think that transparency really kind of garnered this community around us who just love what we're doing and love that they feel like they know us and they know our lives. They know our first and last name. Well, maybe not last, but they know our names for sure. Actually, yeah, they know our first and last. And they're, communicative with us, and they love chatting with us via DM. And that's just continuously been our thing. We really wanted people to feel like we were a part of their friend group. So that's kind of how we've leveraged social media, much more so than the influencer gifting aspect. But to answer your question, how we typically work with people, I don't pay for posts ever, unless it's someone that I'm like, they've worked with us before, they have shown and promoted the product on their own accord because they just love it. Then I'm like, okay, I understand influencers, that's your livelihood and I want to support. So it's kind of like a mutual support experience, but you're never going to catch me like sliding into an influencer's DM and agreeing to like $1,000 a post. It's too much. It's hard as a small business to keep up with that kind of stuff. So that's like my first rule of thumb. And then the second rule of thumb is we really only work with people that are true, quote, nice girls, as we like to refer to ourselves, and soon nice guys, and really just wanting to make sure that they practice what they preach and they are honestly who they say they are. It takes a little bit more research and being a little bit more picky, but I do think in the end, it really keeps us true to who we are, and people respect us for that. Yeah. And same with partnerships. A lot of times we have had people reach out that we're like, it's not the right fit. It might be a big opportunity for us, but it's not the right fit at the end of the day. So we really try to be mindful about that kind of stuff.
Who are you getting advice from? Do you have an official board of directors? And given the fact that you're self-funded, you don't really need that in the same way. So who are you turning to for advice and counsel? And then how do you know who to listen to if you have several people giving you conflicting advice?
This is going to sound really crazy, but like no one,
It
which
does sound a little crazy.
sounds insane. There was a point in time when I first started where I felt like I really, really needed a little bit more guidance. But again, like Google is your best friend. YouTube is your best friend. I learned a lot by just doing my own research. A lot of it has been talking to other small business owners through the trade show circuit, which hopefully that comes back eventually. But you meet so many people who are out there trying to sell their product to retailers that are all young. I mean, I've met so many other bracelet companies and recently, and it's really just asking. Like I reached out to the founder and owner of Pura Vida, which is a major jewelry brand that recently sold to Vera Bradley for like mega millions of dollars. And I was like, how did you do it? What was your process? And I scheduled a 30-minute call with him, and he was so gracious and willing to give me that advice. So a lot of it's just being willing to put yourself out there and ask people who have done it before you.
Yeah.
Asking via Instagram, finding their email, sending them an email. But there's no board. I've had one other mentor throughout the experience where she owned another jewelry company, and we worked something out where I'd be able to contact her whenever I needed. And she really helped me in that earlier phase. But again, it's asking people in their respective industries, as we move into a phase of like, maybe we will want to sell eventually or become acquired or what have you. Now, I'm having more conversations with financial people and lawyers. And every time I talk to someone who's in that industry, I'm like, hey, so can I just, tell you a little bit about my brand? And it's just like a constant conversation. But yeah, it's definitely a little crazy that I don't go to someone. I feel like I'm that person now for so many young startups that it's crazy to think that I got here really through researching and not being afraid to ask people who've been there.
Yeah. Well, and not being afraid to say, I don't know. I really need help. I really need perspective, which is really tremendous advice. So, because we are still in this period of pandemic, talk about how that's affected your business. You're a direct-to-consumer business already, but how did it affect you and your existing team when everything shut down several months ago? What's been the impact?
It was hard. I mean, as a business owner, it was really, really hard because I genuinely did not want to have to furlough any of my employees. I did not want to lose any of my employees permanently. And I really wanted to, kind of make everything work in this new normal. And, again, thankfully, we have a community of customers that are so loyal and just so committed to seeing us thrive that I was able to put up a story on Instagram and say, hey guys, we need your help. We need you to buy. We need you to gift these bracelets to people who need that encouragement during this tough time. And we had our customers come out in droves. I mean, all of wholesale, which is where you sell B2B, right? Instead of direct to consumer, you're selling to retail stores so that they could sell to their consumer. That whole industry was like completely bare for those 4 months. And we're sold in some major retailers like Nordstrom and Anthropologie, and all things halted. Wow. So that was really hard because it becomes a huge revenue stream for you. Sure. So when that halted, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And, we applied for the PPP. Luckily we got that. And we're able to use it all for, the purposes of keeping the team on board. And then our customers came through for us, and we ended up having a better quarter than we had forecasted for, despite all of the changes. And, I know that's not the same for every business. And so, I know how lucky we are, and I'm so grateful. But I really credit our community and the people that show up for us every single day.
Yeah. Was there anything strategically that you did in order to leverage the existing community? So was there anything that you did with social media or with marketing differently, sort of trying to come out of this than you might have done otherwise?
I think definitely showing a little bit more of my cards and like talking to them honestly. I mean, there were tears in my eyes when I gave up my little video spiel, asking them to, support us during this time when they have so many other companies and family members and things that they needed to support. And so we just felt lucky that we were one of them. But then also when it came to shifting focus, we stopped all worrying about our wholesale and all the things we had to get prepared for wholesale, which we're paying for now because it's back and we are not as prepared as we should be. But we shifted focus towards retail, and we were getting orders out the door faster than we ever have, so that this way our customers would be able to get their orders immediately, be immediately gratified, come back and buy again, or share it with others. And it just really helped spread the word even faster. So the strategy really was just like, they are 100% our number one priority above all else. And, I had, while we were lucky that, certain members of my team were considered essential in that they were, factory workers, they had to get those things out the door. So they continued coming in. The rest of my team worked remotely from home. So all the front office, essentially, they had to keep trying to, my partnerships director was like, nobody wants to do anything. And I'm like, I know, we just have to keep planning for the future. And that's really what it came down to, just really shifting gears to being very, very customer centered during those crazy months. But it was nuts, to say the least. They were literally all quarantining and then coming to work only and then going right back home and quarantining again. So it was like very, very unique.
Yeah. So would you consider this to be the biggest challenge that you faced in business, or is there something else that you've dealt with that is helpful for maybe would-be entrepreneurs to understand?
I definitely think it was one of the biggest challenges, just because it was so unexpected and unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really just was like flying by the seat of my pants.
And there's really no one to call, right? When you pick up the phone and call people, everybody was as lost as you were, presumably.
Exactly. And so I think I just borrowed from that experience of being a bootstrapping entrepreneur that had to like pivot and figure it out. And I think, I'm really grateful that I do have that. And I don't have anyone to fall back on as a crutch, if you will, because it really forces me to put my thinking cap on and figure it out, and I was an English major in college, just to be clear. Like, I have no business background. And so it was like, oh my God, I'm really gonna have to. Luckily, my husband is a financial director. And so he he definitely has a head for a lot of that stuff, but I've learned along the way, and it's been easy, not easy, but it's been fun almost to figure out those challenges. I will say, just kind of on another note, as far as how difficult things have been, I mean, there was a period of time for about a year and a half that my husband and I were actually trying to start a family. And it took a very long time. We were, going through the infertility struggle, and that was the hardest time in business for me, because it was the first time that I ever was like, I don't even care about the company right now. Like, I only care about what I'm eating and how I'm acting. And I was so obsessed with getting over that hump that it was really hard for me to like focus on the company at hand. So one of the bigger challenges as a business owner that I will say from now till my death is hiring and getting the right team. So luckily, I was able to put a good group in place that they kind of carried that entire year without much help from me, because I was like in such a state. But yeah, so that was one of the other really hard times, is just really learning how to balance yourself and your business.
If I'm not mistaken, a lot of this was happening during COVID too. So on top of COVID, because you were kind enough to share on social media the great news that you and your husband are expecting your first baby. So congratulations. That's really, really wonderful. But you were dealing with that and the infertility treatments and all the drama and hormone fluctuations and everything that goes with that, while also living through a pandemic and running a business through a pandemic. How did you keep it all together?
Oh my gosh. I didn't. And I didn't fault myself for that. And that's really what it comes down to. I was just like, look, I am a mess. I don't care. This is what it is. My team is freaking awesome. And you guys are, I was just very transparent. I mean, I talked about the infertility struggle. I, shared with social media that I did do IVF for us to be able to conceive. And yeah, you're right. I did those treatments all during the pandemic. My husband couldn't come in with me. He sat in the car in a mask. But, I always look, hindsight is 2020. And looking back, obviously I wouldn't be where I am right now. I wouldn't be pregnant. I wouldn't have this baby coming to me had it not been for all of those things. I mean, in a really crazy way, the COVID, the pandemic really forced me to slow down, chill out, realize that you cannot handle and you can't control everything. And, I think the lesson of infertility is exactly that. And the lesson of the pandemic and the COVID experience is exactly that. So it was this like melding of the right timing, as weird as it is to say, because I know that was not how COVID treated everybody, you know
Right.
what I mean? But I just was forced to chill and kind of let the pieces fall where they may and be confident in what I've built up to that point to establish, that good foundation. And so, yeah, no, it was crazy.
Yeah. So it was very important to you to share authentically, to share your story and your struggle with your community broadly. That can be a very difficult thing to do. Maybe talk about why that was important.
Yeah, I mean, do you mean with regards to infertility or with regards to just being a business owner?
All of it really, because you're making a determination about whether you want something that is really personal to you and very private, whether you want to share that publicly, right? It's not just your story, it's your husband's story, it's your child who's not here yet, but it's everybody's story. So you have to make a determination about whether everybody wants to be in the limelight and wants to have, you know what I mean? So talk about maybe how you thought through that and why that was important from the standpoint of your brand.
Yeah. So, from the standpoint of my brand and just from the standpoint of like my personal brand too, of who Adriana Carrig is, I've been that girl since the very beginning of time. I'm very open. I don't feel like I am someone who, I just thrive in environments where I can talk. And like, if there's something wrong or something that I'm going through, if I keep it all in, I would combust, so I needed the ability to be able to share it. Social media kind of provided that platform where not only could I share, but I could also help. And being able to help other women who are going through that, and often silently, because like you said, this isn't just my story, it's my husband's story, it's my in-laws' story, it's my parents' story. And I definitely in the beginning, a lot of, especially the older generation, was a little like, are you gonna definitely tell everybody this? Are you gonna share the whole thing? And even my little brother is like, who's a little bit more conservative in that regard, he's like, are you gonna really like document the whole experience? And I'm like, yeah, because that I understand that it's not not everybody is comfortable with that, but for me, knowing that I'm able to help other women go through that same struggle who can't and don't have as much of a good understanding from their family, or as understanding of a family, I should say, rather, it that meant the world to me. And having people every other week tell me, hey, I'm going through struggles too, thank you for being so open, it's really helpful to see someone have their happy ending. And that's what kept me going a lot. And now don't get me wrong, there were a lot of times that I wasn't like crying, let me hop on and show that difficulty. I just would share the story a lot of times after or during, but it was a subtle version. And yeah, how that goes back to the brand is the same thing. It's just, I've just always been transparent. I will say that since, the craziness of the election and since getting pregnant and just in general, I've been feeling sort of like icky about social media. So I've been like, I'm going to be a little quieter, and I've been taking my little break and I'm giving myself that grace, and if people have asked like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'll respond, but I'm not as open right now. And that's okay. Like, it's whatever makes sense for you and whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah. Maybe talk a bit about one element of the bracelets that I don't think you touched on is that on each one, there's a little tag with a number. I'd love for you to talk about maybe stories that women have shared through these little tags and what you've learned from their stories.
Each bracelet has a little tag on it. And I don't know if you're going to show any footage, but I'll see if I can put this in the screen a little
bit. We're for sure going to show. Yeah, I can see that. And then we'll also include some photographs. Yeah, I'll get some screenshots. They never look quite as good, but we'll do what we can. So folks should check out both Adriana's feed and mine on Instagram, because we'll post pictures so that you can see both the bracelets and the tags. So sorry to interrupt you.
No, of course. So each bracelet has that little tag, and on there is a number that you use. It's a code, really, that you use to register the bracelet on our mobile app or on our website. So this is a way for you to put in your story, share what the word has done for you, or what it means to you, or why you purchased it, or what have you. And then eventually, when you no longer need that word, or when someone else needs it more than you do, you can pass that bracelet on. And as long as she or he registers the tag, you can actually track and see where the bracelet goes. So you can see how it's impacted that person, and then the next person, and the next person. And it's really just an incredible way to, again, see how your single act of kindness affects people down the line. Some of the stories that we've seen is really, what makes me get out of bed every morning. Just the knowledge that we really are making a difference in so many people's lives. And just the fact that we're still here. I mean, when you look at the product, it's a very simple bracelet. It's a very simple design. It's not like I did anything revolutionary. I just took something that has been a fan favorite forever and put a little extra spin on it. And to know that it's been impacting so many lives has just blown us away. And, obviously my brain is currently in fertility. And those are the stories, though, that really did impact me the most when I was going through my journey. And also the stories are all published. So you can go on our website and read all the recent registrations, which is really cool. But there were bracelets that were passed woman to woman who had gone through infertility and then eventually had their babies. There were bracelets through where one woman would wear it through all of her experience, and then send us a picture of her finally holding her baby with the bracelet visible. Those really
lovely.
Those got me. But there are stories that run the gamut from it's a young girl who just got it for her first dance recital to, an older woman whose daughter gave it to her because she just started her first round of chemo. And then that woman wears it through her survivor story. So it's just incredible that it's this little piece of jewelry. I say it's like plastic on a string. And that's how we kind of like humble ourselves every once in a while when we remember that, and yet it's doing so much good, and it's really humbling.
Well, while the origin of this came from really girl on girl bullying, there's a lot of effort to shine a spotlight on bad behavior. And, you started being bullying many years ago, right? Do you think there's been sort of a shift around this? Do you think that is getting better because of efforts, not just your efforts, even though it's incredibly important? There's a lot of effort to really shine a spotlight and make girls and parents or caregivers much more aware of the problem. Do you see it changing?
I do. I think despite, obviously the state of the world right now, I do feel as though there's never been this much inclusivity being so important. There's never been this much talk of the social difficulties that we are going through as a nation, and the importance of putting, your neighbor ahead of yourself. And I think that that's something that is definitely new. I always say too, like I hopped on right as the wave was about to take off, and we've been cresting through this experience. But, I started the brand 3 years before, the Hillary Clinton election and the I'm With Her campaign and the feminist movement that kind of resurged, and just the girl power that kind of came out from all that. We were starting something just for girls when people were like, really, it's just for girls? Like, what about the rest of the population? So I do feel like we gave it a good 7-year run of just focusing on women. And now as we have seen, a slight change. I mean, again, I never thought I was going to eradicate cruelty with this. Like I said earlier, just like kind of like seep into its territory a bit, and I do think that we've got women in this community and men who are just so committed to being kinder. So I don't know that I can speak necessarily to the whole world at large, but definitely our community has grown, which means that people are more and more aware of this little piece of jewelry that is meant to spread kindness. And we like beat that over the head, that concept. So, if you're wearing a little word, I like to say that, that's like a safe person. That's a nice person that you can trust.
So as I understand it, you're also in the process of launching or have launched a nonprofit arm, the Block Project, correct? Talk about both why you decided to also at the same time launch a nonprofit and what its focus and function is likely to be.
I'm laughing at your question of like, why did you decide to do it at the same time? And my only answer is because it's crazy.
Well, and because you're branching out with men and you're doing, I didn't even realize that you were reaching out to men until we started this conversation, but I'm like, wow, that and the nonprofit almost simultaneously.
All without any help. Anyone to call. No, so your questions are making me feel like I'm crazier than I am. No, but it's good. I love being busy. And especially with an impending maternity leave coming up, I'm like getting it all in now and settled so that I'm not like launching something brand new in April when I'm due.
But they are different focuses, right? I mean, the nonprofit has a different focus. So maybe talk about what that big difference is and why you felt that there was an additional need that wasn't being met through the retail business.
Yeah, so it was always very important to me to be giving back throughout the process of having the retail business. So whether it was, every month we worked with a different nonprofit in the very beginning, and I would donate a portion of the sales of a one bracelet, and I changed that every single month. And that was kind of tough, but that was the original model, that it would have a bracelet per month for a different nonprofit, and we could, give back to that nonprofit. That was great, very hard to keep up with as we continued to grow. So then we shifted to every quarter, then every year. And it wasn't until about 5 years in, the whole time I knew I wanted to start something that would really be impactful as a nonprofit. But it wasn't until about 5 years in that I was like, you know what, I think what it really should be is focusing on young women, the collegiate age in college who kind of were like me, who had, I was lucky enough to have a group of women that I could turn to, and they helped shape me. And I was, but that's not always the case for everyone in sororities, and nor is that the case for every girl on college campuses who don't have a sports group or a sorority to turn to. So I wanted to be kind of like the home away from home for those girls, where they could learn principles of self-love, kindness, confidence, leadership, things that you're not really taught in school. So that's kind of where the Block came to be. It stands for Bold Leaders Organizing Communities of Kindness. And we launched it actually a year and a half ago. So it's definitely been ahead of what's been going on, what we're planning on doing with the men's stuff. But it has unfortunately been one of the hardest things hit by COVID because of the lockdowns, girls not going back to school. We were just kind of getting into the swing of things. We already had 10 chapters, and we were trying to continue to build, but everything paused. Grants paused. Girls, these girls going back to school, and then like the world exploded, and it felt like, oh my God, there's so many causes right now that need more. I shouldn't say more attention, but more attention.
Sure.
That I even myself was like, okay, let's kind of just provide these girls who we currently have with the digital tools. So we've kind of shifted to more of like a digital panel option. I'll probably share with them this recording, just to kind of provide them with that inspiration without putting any extra stress on them and, requiring that they meet once a month, so long story short, that you didn't even ask how it was affected, but that's your answer.
Yeah.
And then, to do it all right now and to continue to run that stuff, it is hard. It's one of the harder things, because it's not like you just snap your fingers and have a flourishing nonprofit. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's going to require a lot more time and effort to build it to what we're hoping it to be.
Yeah, it's a beautiful concept though. It really is lovely. So if you could maybe share with me the impact that you hope to have Right. If you had to distill it down, what's the impact that you hope you will have had?
I hope that over time, our bracelets are truly synonymous with kindness in the way that I was just kind of alluding to earlier. I've got plenty of stories of now where, we have customers that say, oh, I saw someone wearing a little word at Starbucks. And we had a whole conversation about what her word was, and we did an exchange or what have you. And those stories have become more and more frequent. And I want them to be, I would love eventually for it to be like commonplace for everyone to have a bracelet, and for it to be a normal thing where you're just like, oh, you're going through this, I have strength, let me pass that on. And it's not like having to teach them what it is anymore, but rather just this knowledge that, this product exists that is meant to spread kindness. And if you see someone in it, that that's a safe person. And if we can get it onto as many wrists as possible, there's a chance that that could actually be achieved. So definitely a broad goal for sure, but we've come this far and accomplished this much with zero knowledge of what we were doing. So to know that, we've come that far, there's no telling how far we can go with it.
Yeah. If you could give yourself advice, sort of going back to the point in which you started this business, maybe a single piece of advice or something that you wish you had known then, what would that be?
I think it's take care of yourself. And I say that because for a long time, I really only cared about this business, and it took first place to everything in my life, including my sleep, my mental health, my well-being. And, I was diagnosed, by the way, as unexplained infertility. There was no explanation for it. And I'm not a doctor, and I'm not going to pretend that, I know what exactly did it to me. But I do think that all that stress for so many years really affected my body. And, whether that was what did it or didn't, it's still like, I still feel it to this day. It's hard to get out of bed in the morning, so, and I'm 30, I'm going to say 29, not anymore, I'm 30. And that just shouldn't be like the case right now. So I say that because I know there are so many people who believe this concept of like, you got to hustle, never stop. And even if I were a little further behind where I am today, I do think that I would, my body would be thanking me, kind of thing. So just taking care of yourself. It's not a huge business piece of advice, but when you're your best, then you can perform your best. And I think I maybe would have made a lot less mistakes along the way if I was a little less tired, or a little better nourished. So yeah, taking care of myself is probably I'd do it a little bit better if I could go back in time.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's great advice. This has been such a pleasure. I really loved meeting you, and congratulations on everything you have going on, the baby coming, the business, all of these things. It's really terrific.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate it. It's been a great conversation. You really are probably one of the best interviewers that I've ever worked with. So
you're sweet. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. To learn more about Adriana Carrig and the Little Words Project, check out the show notes for this episode. And don't forget, her amazing bracelets make great holiday gifts. So if you're starting to think about the holidays, which are coming up in just a few short weeks, check out the link that I've included in the show notes for this episode. You can purchase her bracelets directly from that link. If you're new to She Said podcast, please be sure to check out our past episodes, including the new short form pods. These are 5 to 10 minutes of perspective on a topic that comes up that I think you guys will really appreciate. The last one was on how you can build your confidence by embracing those or building relationships with those who have a different ideology or political point of view. These are new content for the platform, and I would really love to know what you think. I'd also love to know what other topics you'd really like to hear about. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. And before I let you go, I also want to ask a favor. If you're enjoying She Said podcast, and I sure hope you are, I would be so grateful if you could share us with your friends. And I would also be so grateful if you would go on iTunes and give us a nice review. Just a few quick words and 5 stars, if you don't mind, would be awesome. Nice words and nice reviews make a big, big difference. They help us move up the charts, and they help others who are looking for content like this to find it more easily. I really appreciate you being here as always, and I hope that you found some great perspective and got a positive lift for your week. I'll see you next time. Take care.